There is a private island in the Caribbean with no public guest list, no security cameras visible to the outside world, and no official record of arrivals or departures. For years, that invisibility, the visits continued regardless. To understand how this kind of data gets collected in the first place, you have to understand what happens in the fraction of a second between when you open an app on your phone and when an advertisement appears on your screen. What looks like a simple LED load is actually a rapid, automated auction. Your device transmits a package of information, your device identifier, behavioral signals, and in many cases your precise GPS coordinates, to an advertising exchange. Dozens of companies bid on that signal in real time. The winner gets to show you the ad. Everyone else gets to keep the data. Data brokers operate inside this ecosystem. Their business model is to aggregate those signals at scale, build profiles on individual devices, and sell access to that information to clients who want to understand where groups of people come from, where they go, and what patterns their movements follow. According to internal documents from around that period, the company connected to this data set claimed to have built profiles on over 1 billion devices across more than 40 countries. Their platform allowed clients to define a geographic zone and receive a detailed report on devices that passed through it. Someone drew that zone around Epstein's island. The report was generated. Then it was left exposed. The coordinates within the dataset cluster in patterns that reveal how the island was actually used. The densest concentrations appear around the main residential structure and its adjacent pool area, along the southern beachfront, and near a hilltop structure that has been referenced in legal proceedings and victim testimony. Movement patterns repeat across multiple days and across multiple years, which indicates these were not incidental presences. Devices returned. People came back. Reaching the island required logistics. The nearest commercial airport is on the neighboring island of St. Thomas, roughly 8 miles away. Flight records and court documents established that Epstein maintained a private aviation operation that included a large jet used to transport guests across considerable distances. The location data contains signals consistent with arrivals at that airport that align with the island visit timeline, suggesting that many visitors flew in before completing the final leg of the journey by water. The most common water transit point reflected in the data corresponds to a marina on the eastern side of St. Thomas, a facility that Epstein had financial involvement with during this period. From that point, the route north takes approximately 20 minutes by boat, passing a second island that Epstein purchased in 2016 for $22 million. He had planned significant development there, but encountered legal resistance after construction activities were found to have damaged protected marine habitats. The data traces devices moving past that second island before arriving at a private dock on the main property. Helicopter access was also available. Epstein kept an aircraft on the island and used it regularly, according to testimony given in civil proceedings, to move himself and others from the airport or other locations directly onto the property. The data reflects movement patterns consistent with that access point as well. Now here is where the dataset becomes something more than a record of one island, because the tracking did not stop when visitors left. Location intelligence platforms typically enrich their reports by identifying what they call common location patterns, recurring nighttime coordinates that suggest a home address, recurring daytime coordinates that suggest a workplace the dataset tied to this query contains. Well over 100 secondary locations spread across the continental United States, more than 2. Dozen states are represented. The distribution spans an extraordinary range of economic circumstances, from addresses within gated residential communities in the Midwest to coastal properties in areas associated with generational wealth, and also to neighborhoods with significantly lower median incomes, a detail that demands careful handling because not everyone present on that island during those years was there, voluntarily or as a guest. That distinction is not a footnote. It is the most important interpretive challenge in working with this kind of data. A GPS coordinate does not carry context. It cannot tell you whether the person whose device generated it was powerful or powerless, either by choice or by coercion. Responsible analysis requires holding that ambiguity rather than collapsing it for the sake of a cleaner story. One geographic absence in the data is worth examining closely. Despite well-documented evidence that Epstein maintained international relationships and that people traveled to the island from multiple countries, the secondary location data contains no coordinates from anywhere in Europe. Given what is known about his social network, that gap is not explained by a lack of European visitors. The more likely explanation is structural. The European Union's data protection framework, which reached full enforcement in 2018, imposes significant restrictions on how personal location data can be collected, processed, and transferred outside the region. Under those rules, the passive ambient collection that feeds data brokers operates under legal constraints that have no equivalent in the United States during the same period. American devices generated data that entered commercial pipelines with minimal legal friction. European devices, operating under a different regulatory environment, largely did not. The map reflects the law as much as it reflects the guest list. This points to something the dataset reveals beyond the specifics of any one case. The infrastructure that made this surveillance possible was not designed to document visits to a sex offender's private island. It was designed to help advertisers understand consumer behavior. The fact that it captured this is not a malfunction. It is a demonstration of what the system does at full scale, applied to a location that happened to be significant. The same query logic works anywhere. Draw a boundary around a hospital, a courthouse, a shelter, a campaign office, a house of worship. The system does not distinguish between those locations and a private Caribbean island. It collects, it stores, it sells. And when the output is misconfigured, it sits in plain sight on the internet, waiting. Jeffrey Epstein died in a federal detention facility in New York in August 2019 while awaiting trial on federal sex trafficking charges. His associate Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted in 2021 on multiple counts, including sex trafficking of a minor, and is currently serving a 20-year federal sentence. Her arrest was itself enabled in part by location data, which federal investigators used to trace her to a property in rural New Hampshire. Both Little St. James and the neighboring island were sold in 2023 for $60 million to a private investor who is currently developing the property into a luxury resort. The structures associated with Epstein's time there are being removed. The physical footprint is being erased. The data is not. It persists in datasets and servers and archived reports generated by systems that had no particular interest in Epstein, in his crimes, or in the people who visited him. They were just collecting what the phones gave them. And what the phones gave them turned out to be a record that no guest registry, no security protocol, and no amount of deliberate secrecy could have prevented. That is what ambient surveillance looks like when it intersects with history. Not a targeted investigation. Not a warrant. A data broker. A misconfigured file and coordinates that were always there, waiting for someone to find them.